Okay, we're live and recording. This is going to be a socionics typing session using Model A. I'm going to be asking you a series of questions. Just answer openly and honestly. I will likely reward you a typing at the end of the session, not always. And if I do, I want you to take that with a grain of salt. See it in the bigger scheme as one data point in many. Do you have anything you'd like to say to me before we get started?
I'm ready to go.
Cool. All right. Tell me about yourself. What are you doing in your day to day?
What I'm doing in my day to day, or tell you about myself, or both.
Both.
Okay. Um, so my name's Antonia. I'm currently finishing undergrad for a bachelor's in industrial organizational psychology and double major in philosophy. And then I plan on going to grad school soon. So right now, what's happening in my life is I just finished like an 8-month long internship for an HR position. And now I finished the IO degree. I need to finish the philosophy degree, and I need to decide whether it would be smarter to just drop it. But then if I do drop it, it was all for nothing. So like there's some sunk cost dilemma going on right now. But yeah, I'm going to right now during the spring semester try and finish that up in whatever way I can, and then hopefully next fall I will start grad school. Right now I just moved back into my parents' house. There is no such thing as like a daily routine or schedule for me, especially right now, so that's there's not much there. But yeah, I don't know. If you want to know more specific things about me, I'll need you to ask.
All right. So it's interesting that you like philosophy and psychology.
Yeah.
This must be right up your alley.
Yeah,
Typology.
if I can study cognitive functions in some way, I would really love to do that. I want to go into cognitive psychology in the field and see what can be done. But I have a lot of back reading and seeing what has been done to do
Mm-hmm.
before I can make any contributions myself if there's any to make. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, I definitely think that one of the important things is that you can use the cognitive lenses in order to categorize people. And what I would like to see is like a using them for an analysis as people age, trying to figure out some things using that in order to, I would say, find information on how to treat problems in people's lives. So, I mean, I think it could be an important tool, but of course, perhaps it's not something to be taken super seriously.
Yeah, if I can't go into it, then I'm thinking about going into therapy. But then I was just told today that there's really no money in therapy, which I don't know if I believe. I don't, but I'll have to look
If you get to
into it.
private practice, I think that there's more potential, but generally speaking, working for the government, I think it's going to be pretty average pay rate.
Mm, yeah, so see what I do. But yeah.
That's the hard part. Follow your heart, and you'll never know where you're going to land, you know? What is it about psychology that draws you to it?
Mm, everything about it, but I suppose in a broader sense, rather than just like studying it in school, I'm really drawn to, I suppose, theory of mind or empathy, like reading others, and understanding how other people's minds work, which trickles down into every facet of psychology. So that's why I really like typology because I want to understand how someone else's um, mind operates and where they're coming from in the most clear and like insightful way I can, rather than assuming that they're thinking just like me. Are there not that I tend to do that or anything? It's just that's what I see a lot, and I feel that if people could read others better and really understand where other people are coming from better, it would make a lot of things a lot better. But
Yeah,
in general, I also just find it fascinating as well. So,
certainly.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
people do really expect themselves from other people, and I definitely think that's a big snag to get into. Your intentions are not somebody else's, and they're free to do with you whatever they feel is appropriate. So, never expect that everyone's going to behave in rational ways that you would expect them to do.
Mhm. Yeah. So, um, just learning where behaviors and mentalities come from really help. And also, it's just very interesting, the different ways that you can study it. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
mhm.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Can you tell me about any reoccurring problems you've had in your life?
Mm, um, I have pretty severe ADHD, and I feel like I've talked about this in all my typing videos. I don't want it to get old that I keep talking about it, but of course, this is your first time hearing about it. And so I really struggle with executive dysfunction. So, like, reoccurring problems is like chronic time blindness. So that means that, like, I'm late a lot, but also I can't tell how long something's going to take to do, or it's much harder to assess. Like, you know what time of day it is, but it's uh, time moving is much harder for you to perceive. And from what I understand of what little research I've looked at, it has something to do with like your circadian rhythm inherently working differently. I don't know how true that is, but
Mm-hmm.
at least that was a theory I've seen. But yeah, so that's something that I've struggled with a lot, and it's affected every aspect of my life. Is like just perceiving time, so showing up late to places, which makes people really upset with you, but also just not knowing how long a task is going to take to do, or if you have an appointment in the afternoon, then you're in waiting mode all day because you don't want to get distracted and then miss it because you weren't paying attention to the time. And so um, that's one thing that's been a recurring problem a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good observation that the circadian rhythm might have something to do with it. Simply because that we are so set with like the external world around us that we don't really realize that when we're abstracted out of it. And so we're just like experiencing like all these different disparate symptoms from all sort of different corners and angles that I think require a lot of scientific research. And that we're almost still in the dark ages of psychology, because we have these beliefs that I think are very strongly around making money. Even though that I think I'm learning more about SSRIs and being less cynical about them as I get further through the process. It's to me, I think that there's a lot of underlying issues that are not being solved.
Yeah, there's more about the brain and the psyche that we don't know than we do 100%. So we're learning every day, but we're still in the very, very early years of the field of psychology or neuroscience or anything to do with
Mm-hmm.
how people operate. So
Psychology was once supposed to be the replacement for philosophy.
they're compatible, but they're definitely different fields, I'd say, having taken both a bunch of psychology and philosophy classes.
They're similar.
Mm. Psychology, if anything, I feel that almost psychologists have an insecurity about it being considered a soft science, and so they go hard on the science part of it, and so there's no real room for the speculation or wonder, I suppose, that philosophy allows. So that was something that I really liked about my philosophy classes, is we didn't have to like validate every single fucking thing we said with a study or to make it scientific. We could just discuss ideas and morality and um different inherent ways of being without it. This test only has 80% validity and reliability, therefore it is not scientifically reliable, and we cannot consider it any further. It got really like annoying. So I understand the need for hard science, absolutely. But it was nice to have a separate arena to play around in rather than everything having to be 100% backed up by data.
Hmm.
So
I think science can be translated in a pedantic way, um, but I don't think that that invalidates certain things that are kind of left as a on discovery, just floating out there in the ether for somebody to stumble on it and bust their ass, Um, and that's what I think one of the biggest difficulties is that if you follow science, I think that you will kind of come to some sort of like objective conclusion because there are scientists doing science for the sake of science. But I think it's also relatively corporate in some aspects as well. And it is kind of biased, and especially in psychology. Excuse me. There's a very low rate of success in the psychological realm, and it's like the replication crisis and all this. And I think psychology is going through a difficult time.
yeah, it'll just be something to deal with if I go further into it. But yeah.
Yeah. I think in order to have a scientific mind, you got to keep your mind open, and you have to find out for yourself rather than take everyone's face value.
And I'd say the good scientists really do that. It's just sometimes there's too much of an emphasis on whether you can prove something empirically or not, and that can be yeah. But yeah, that's just my own little gripes. I'd have to go into examples to really clarify what I mean, but
Yeah, I can think of numerous examples.
you want examples?
Oh no, we can move on if you're good.
Yeah.
Are you doing the typing, or what's going on?
Yeah, he's typing me right now.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next question. I don't know what country you're from. I've almost learned not to guess, even though I would assume. So you elected the dictator of your home country for 6 months to solve its problems. What do you do?
Oh, only 6 months. Are you truly a dictator if you can only rule for 6 months? I mean, actually, yeah. You probably are. You'd be killed pretty quick. Okay. I would forgive all student loan debt. What else? I would implement. Oh, that would take way longer than 6 months. I would put in the foundational groundwork to allow for universal healthcare to happen, but I couldn't do all of that within 6 months. So putting in the foundational groundwork for that to happen. What else? And I'm assuming we just mean the literal country you're in, not like an imaginary country that I can.
Yeah. I think some people take it down that avenue, but generally speaking, I am trying to gauge how you interact with things that are more practical and realistic in the grand scheme.
I would learn all the secrets and the whatever's going on behind the scenes, purely for my own entertainment. Because if I'm gonna be dictator for 6 months, I might as well have fun with it. But also to see just how much influence, because really it's stockholders who run America, not really government, but that's its own. Just see who has the most influence, how it really actually operates on a day-to-day basis. And I'm thinking still with the idea that I could do something after 6 months. Am I being killed after 6 months, or am I just demoted?
Well, I guess your election term dissipates and you're free to
Mhm.
go. But who's not to say somebody might be angered by your time and power and that you could be assassinated? You know, that could happen.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, really with 6 months' time, you would just have to lay the groundwork for stuff to happen in the future in your absence rather than being able to implement it yourself realistically. Unless I had a huge team of people who were like very loyal to me and did my bidding, then I guess you could get more done. But yeah, main thing is that I would try the look at things constitutionally, what needs to happen that's like been a problem for a long time, see if I can solve it. Like, I don't know, shit like Flint water crisis, is that still going on? Just things that I could solve that I know about, that I could use dictatorial wars to complete. So, but institutionally, like if I could implement like student loan debt forgiveness, set up the foundation for universal health care, set up a universal income program, and get that to start going rather than a welfare state. And universal income would be all the tests that I've seen have shown that that's far more beneficial for people. And at least those would be like my three main goals. I wouldn't try to overextend it. But I don't know, maybe I'd be elected for 6 months and then figure out a way to stay longer if I could,
Yeah.
whichever works. But yeah, those are what I would do.
To summarize, it was make student loan debts be forgiven. You were also talking about understanding that in the time allotted, you can only really set a framework rather than do it yourself unless you had some giant team of people that was loyal to you, you said. So, what
Yeah.
else? Because you said you had 3 points.
Yeah. Student loan debt forgiveness, universal health care, and universal income. Things
Yeah.
I would try to do.
All right. Let's move on. Do you find it easy to relax?
Yeah. Although I have a lot of anxiety, so if there's something hanging over my head, I will relax to get away from that feeling. So yes, I could relax easier, but to, I guess, truly relax, where you're not stressed out might be harder for me due to anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you kind of like relax to escape anxiety, but you're saying you're just generally kind of anxious.
Mm. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had things go awry. I had somebody in my room last night and my cards were scattered.
Wait, someone. I guess we don't have time to go into that, but you're right though.
Yeah, I just had to find my notes.
Yeah.
What's your criteria for a good idea?
Hmm. That's such an interesting question. I don't know if criteria for a good idea is the way I would frame it. If you're like criteria for a good goal or something, that would be one thing, but ideas don't necessarily need to be implemented um, into fruition. So, and a good idea is just simply something you hadn't thought of yourself. I guess for me, if I was hearing a good idea for someone else, um, it would be something that I haven't thought of myself, or take something that I had thought of and add something extra to it that I hadn't considered. Something that something new, I suppose. But if it were a good idea for myself, then I suppose something that's insightful and new for other people. So
Insightful and new for other people. Okay. I think that's interesting that you frame it that way.
basically, I mean, what makes an idea, I suppose there's no, I guess there are bad ideas, but what makes an idea useful, or however we're defining good, is that it's new and novel and inspires more ideas. So,
Mm-hmm.
but then it also has like a truth to it. There's some insight in it that you hadn't considered before, which is the new part, you know.
Yeah. What is truth?
There's so many ways you could define truth, I guess. Hmm. Truth, as I understand it, is something that is true regardless of its objective. It's true regardless of your own beliefs, anyone else's, own beliefs. It's true. It's factual. It speaks for itself. It proves itself with its own existence. It does not need to be, um, it the world was round when everyone believed it was flat. The truth stayed the truth regardless of what people thought or understood, and it will remain the truth forever. And so, um, factually, objectively, empirically is how I will get to whatever is the truth. And if it's something that cannot be um, achieved that way, then there's going to be many shades of gray and different uh, points that are going to be have their own truth to them, or their own um this thing is true while this thing is also true, and they coexist together, and neither could particularly be proven or disproven, and it's more speculation. Like, that's something that exists as well. But if we're going to be like determine whether something is the truth or not, then it's going to be like a fact. It's going to be something that is uh exists in and of itself without need for speculation or analyzing. So,
Mm-hmm. Stands for itself.
speaks for itself. Yeah. Stands
Gotcha.
for itself could be a way to put it too.
Do you ever make decisions using the affect of other people? Examples of this can include facial expression, body language, or tone of voice.
Decisions,
Yes.
just because someone, while reading someone's body language, basically. Social decisions, I guess. Like, if someone's clearly uncomfortable and you can see it on their face, but they're too nervous or timid to speak out loud, then I might change my behavior to eliminate whatever is making them uncomfortable, right? Like, um, so social decisions based on body language, sure, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that it can go beyond the social realm?
Um, well, I mean, that depends on the type of decision. If I'm like, I'm gonna go study philosophy and someone gives me like a "you're stupid" look, that's not gonna do anything for me. I mean, might not talk about it with them anymore because there would be no point to that, but it's not gonna affect my decision making and what I've already decided.
I can't
Um,
understand philosophy. and you're a joke because I'm a joke. Projection. I get that speech every now and then.
I'd say I read. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just joking about people. I said I get that speech every now and then.
Yeah. No, I'd say I read people pretty well. I just that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to affect decision making that I've already made beyond social stuff regarding like of my example previously.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a practicality to that skill?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, um, being able to read people means you can really hear what they're saying, you can really empathize and see the heart of where they're coming from, and that tends to, I mean, if you want to be manipulative, that would absolutely help you, but um I don't necessarily want to do that. It's more just being able to read people. I mean, I would say first and foremost, I just find it interesting over uh, utility, but there's definitely utility in that, and there's definitely uh, consequences and deficiencies if you can't do that well. So it prevents, negative consequences of not being able to read a room if you can read a room. Even if you haven't done anything, at least you haven't done the wrong thing, I suppose. But yeah.
All right. Are you good at predicting the future?
Yeah, depends on the thing. Sometimes like I can see and I know this is probably an NI question, so I'm trying not to like um play into what people know to be NI, but you can see if something is or someone is going down the path they're on right now, where they will end up if they don't change course. Like I'm very good at seeing that. Or um, this is the direction we're heading now as a society or as an industry, or with the current trends and patterns, here's what will continue to happen should what's happening now follow through to its logical conclusion. So yeah. But then there's also just having insightful, like this is going to happen or that's going to happen. That's less analytical and more just like a sense of knowing.
Mm-hmm. So pretty well, it would seem. How do you handle conflict?
Mm, I really don't like to be in the middle of conflict. I like handling other people's conflict. But if it's my own, I will shut down or just remove myself from whatever's causing the conflict, whatever it is. I just remove it from my sight, remove it from me so that it's not affecting me anymore. Just shutting it down. Um, but um, with other people, I don't know. I can talk down people who are pretty uh, hyped up and in the middle of a fight or whatever. But I don't tend to like. I can get them to chill out and to make them feel heard and validated in whatever they're feeling so that they can then express what's wrong. I can do that pretty well. But as far as like confronting someone or whatever, I really just don't. I prefer never to do that. I don't like doing that. I'm just, most of the time, unless it's going to achieve something tangible that I'm looking to achieve, I don't confront people about stuff. Like unless there's an actual outcome I'm looking to create, because I'm not gonna yeah, I'm far more uh relaxed when it comes to conflict, and I just if there's not a real true reason to instigate it, then I don't. But when it comes to other people's conflict, I feel like I can mediate pretty well. Um so it just depends on the type of conflict you're talking about, I suppose.
Yeah, I gotcha. How do you form your morals?
What are my morals? Um if something bothers me morally, I prefer to, like, if I see something and I think like that's wrong, or if I'm not bothered by it and yet it's something that's considered to be wrong, I like to analyze that and understand why I have that reaction to it. Um, but um, I suppose I form them through like what is my priority, like what is the one thing I want to maintain, and then I prioritize that above everything else. So like um if I'm in an interaction and I um prioritize like ensuring that the people around me are the least amount of traumatized as possible, or whatever, let's say it's like an accident, over anything else, then I would, sacrifice other things that may be considered morally imperative or whatever, or I would some be able to reconcile the two, um, rather than, yeah. But also a lot of it's fairly instinctual, I suppose. It's just what feels right to me, and like how to treat other people, and a lot of how to treat other people is based in, how do I want to be treated myself when I was in this situation, what did I need, how can I help, what can I do in this situation, basically, to help another person or whatever. So yeah, when it comes to, but I see a lot of gray. I When it comes to morality, I'm not exactly like black and white. I see all sides and I see all perspectives, and I have my own and I have it pretty strongly, but I can see everything else. So I suppose when it comes to my own moral decisions, it's basically just, is this the right thing to do for me?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I think we're going to move on to the final question, and then we'll get to the results.
Mm.
How do you handle constructive criticism?
I prefer constructive criticism. I like it when it's done well. Uh, Hold on, how do I react to it? The main way I react to it is how well they worded it. So I feel like I can handle constructive criticism pretty well. Um, it's just like uh if it's how useful it is to me, and whether or not it's like true. Like there's a difference between like someone's just trying to hurt you or whatever, and it's not actual constructive criticism, versus like this and this. Like, first, I feel like anything that could be constructively criticized for me, I'm probably going to already be aware of, because I can be very hard on myself. So it's just going to be confirmation that other people can see the things uh that I know myself that I need to improve. But the fact that other people can point it out may pinpoint like these three things that I'm very hard on myself about. are what other people notice, whereas these other 3 things that I'm equally as hard as myself about, other people aren't noticing as well, and they're focused. So it can give me, I guess, orientation towards what should be prioritized to improve. But I usually, I feel like I take criticism pretty well. I don't freak out. I don't get offended. I'm not gonna get triggered. I feel like I can handle criticism pretty well. It's mainly just like however I react to it is mainly going to be how useful it is to me. And I would prefer if it, I mean, like I said, most of the time I already know stuff that I need to improve on, but if it's something insightful that I hadn't realized that I do or that I need to improve, or that's like an area I can focus on, then I really appreciate that outside perspective, like telling me, hey, I've noticed this about you. You know, this, you could do XYZ a lot better. And if it was something I didn't realize that I wasn't doing very well, that can be very helpful. But yeah, otherwise, constructive criticism isn't like a problem. I prefer it when it's done well.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think we can go ahead and get to the results. I'm just going to go through and explain socionics a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about how you pertain to that. So, in socionics, there are 4 blockings. So the first blocking we're going to talk about is the ego blocking. So the way these blockings are divided are into strong and weak, and valued and unvalued. The ego is strong and valued. So within the ego block is going to be the elements, 2 elements, 8 in total, 2 for each blocking, that represent your face to the world, what other people recognize in you, what you are capable of doing, and essentially what you're going to be making product with in the world. So that there's sort of like a tangible aspect to what you do. You manifest as this in the world. So the first one we're going to talk about, which is number 1 in socionics, is the base, 4-dimensional valued. The way that the base looks like is something inescapable that you spend most of your time in. You use it the best, and then therefore you can even be cynical about it. You can see when it doesn't work. So there's going to be even a point where the base looks at itself, either with apathy or other things, especially in the world where it sees lower quality of itself. And so then it kind of lends to a cynicism. But the base that I believe that you have is NI. So with NI base, this is going to be a person who is going to be basically abstracted from their environment. They're going to have a dazzling inner world full of narratives and things unfolding, and they're going to be very imaginative. They're going to like to use things of the mind in order to figure out the world around them, because they themselves are very sensitive and impressionable to the world. Anybody with 4-dimensional NI is. But they're also very much in opposition to it, because the whole image is created in a vacuum. And the evidence of NI really is like 4-dimensional observation, and they really understand how like the light refracts, and through that refractment, how things are not always as they seem. And there's like a deeper layer, 4 dimensions. So the reason I think you're NI base simply is because you take up with a lot of ideas. Not to say that the only people who take up with ideas are NI based. That's not true. They can be NI adjacent. But generally speaking, they use their mind to figure out things. And this is what I'm noticing. You have an interest in philosophy and psychology. That itself is not quality high enough for NI base. But I think when you look at the big picture, and especially how you're talking about when I'm asking you, oh, are you good at predicting the future? You're sitting here and you're unpacking things, and you're telling me that it's going to look this way in the future, and I know where it's going. You can think of like Friedrich Nietzsche, for example, being like this big, great diagnostician of society decades in advance. They look at traits and then abstract where they're going towards. Another good example of you using NI, just in the TE question, of course, very strongly, but you are referring to basically your ability to enact change into the world. And then you're seeing that in the grand scheme of things, rather than getting too caught up in it. to actually look at it and think about it. And so you're saying that the world itself is this very difficult thing to change, and you're talking about what it would take to overcome that weight that people might not recognize or realize, which I'm sure that everybody does, with the world and how difficult it is to change, and how some people are great at changing the world, to be honest. So now let's move on to the blocking. So the blocking with the base is the creative. So the way that the creative works is it's kind of the alternate hand to the dominant, reassessing and reorganizing information as it comes down from command, making it more palatable and nuanced to the world around it. So it's making it more specific and grounded and relative. In this instance, I believe that you have creative FE. And even though that I would almost say that it's ambiguous at times, it makes a lot of sense that it would be FE creative rather than FE base, because we'll get into it at the very end, why that is. But with FE creative, this is a person who could recognize people's like emotional states and temperaments in order to kind of work with them or work around them. They tend to be pretty flexible people. They tend to be people who can maneuver themselves, people who can essentially use that ability to get their grand scheme around the reality of it having to be in the water with people and having all these things that touch it and surround it because it's dynamic. And so it's all these parts going into it, and how all those things connect to the NI manifest how I am in the world. And I think that you have a very good ability to recognize that and to see people's emotional states and to know when to know where they're at and how to deal with them. You know, you can calm fights, for example. I think that you're aware of people around you. You're not like insular. You're not ignoring that. You're telling me that you know this. The only reason I say that is because I've just recognized times where FE creative can come in to make that exact same observation. And so me as an IJ, I'm so stubborn that I do need to be tapped on the shoulder and reminded, hey, you're not just like in isolation from the world. You know, it's like you gotta pay attention. And so that's just one pattern that I've seen, and you're kind of leveraging that same advice. I think especially even in the TE question that I was asking about the constructive criticism, you're talking about the quality of people transmitting emotions through the criticism. There again, it's like demonstrating high dimensionality of FE, and that this is kind of a modus operandi and where your brain comes at it from and thinks about things. Now let's move on to the next blocking. So the superego in opposition to the ego is you're weak and unvalued. And so instead of it being who you are, it's what you're criticized for and what you criticized other people for doing. Thus it being the superego, the thing that perches above and teaches, because that person doesn't have it for themselves. So it's part of the mental ring, and so these things are very much under a magnifying glass, despite their low dimensionality, because of their necessity in navigating the world. The first one we're going to talk about, number 3, the creative's number 2, is the role. So the role is two-dimensional and valued, and even though it is in this unfortunate position, it gets a lot of playtime because it's used as like an alternate sort of mask for the ego in order to get things done purely. It's not done for the sake of itself. It is not as it is. It is as the ego commands. It is what it wants. So the role that I believe you have is SI. The way that SI role works is this can be a person who abstracts themselves out of their body in order to understand how to treat the body and how to work with your state of well-being and to use it. And so you find that there's a fascination with a lot of people who are SI role, wanting to heal and wanting to help and do things of this nature, because they're bringing to the world through their NI SI, which is well-being. I find this with a lot of doctors, You, for example, have an interest in psychology and helping people. I think that could be an example of it. But the thing is that you're talking about you only relax as a means of calming your anxiety, which that pertains to another element that we'll get to here in a bit. But that inability to relax and using relaxation as a distraction is not really demonstrating ego of that, because it's not being done for the sake of itself. It is being used to get you through life and to ease any hangups that you have. And so there it is, not just for itself, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So now we're going to talk about the blocking with the role. Number 4, which is the vulnerable or polar. It is 4-dimensional unvalued. It is a point of pain, with more so what's surrounding it than what's inside of it. But it's a very strong fixation for the person, because what it does is it allows them to overcome their flaws. And you'll see the other 7 elements bending around to cover this one, because it's just so weak. The role, and especially, is saying, "Here, little buddy, I got you," as it carries it across the finish line. So to describe polar TE, this would be a person who does not update their repertoire through information they find casually around them. That the information has to have an importance in a vector in order to be accepted by the whole. It has to have a degree of congruency, rather than it being just this being taken up for where it lays. So I think in a way that you are kind of demonstrating a desire to do that, and you're talking about wanting to improve your flaws, wanting to basically be open to information. But when it comes down to it, you had a way of responding to the constructive criticism question, which was also dismissive. And I think that kind of shows it being unvalued, simply because you have a fixation and a focus on it, but at the same time, you're kind of dismissing it and not like fully embracing it as this thing that you need that sharpens yourself. You're saying, in fact, the NI has this covered. I already see what my flaws are, so I don't need to hear what they are. And so there was a very strong resorting to the ego when you were talking about TE, and I think that's simply the evidence of the other 8 elements of the ones that I mentioned prior, trying to be like, "Don't worry, buddy, we got you." So we've got 2 more blockings to discuss. The first one we're going to hit on is the super id. So the super id, in opposition to the super ego, is basically valued, and so therefore it's something that the person seeks, rather than having this almost oppositional or pretty much oppositional relationship to it. So within it there is the suggestive, which is 1-dimensional unvalued, and the mobilizing, which is 2-dimensional unvalued. The suggestive being 1-dimensional, also number 5, is not something that you do well, but it is something that you accumulate through life, because you are, even though the information is stacking on top of it, and it has weight underneath it to support it. There's some sort of structure. And so this seeking, which is what the suggestive is, since you do not have it, you are looking for it. That's where that comes from, and so you are attracted to this thing when you see it. Not to say that you won't argue with it, because it's so different from you, you just might. But it is also something that will stoke your fire. So, and I'm saying that for a very specific reason. SE suggestive, as I was saying, basically your fire, your gumption, your libido, your ability to maneuver in the world and have the world maneuver around you. It's tactical awareness. When combined with an eye, it is sort of strategy and tactics itself. It is a person operating in the moment in order to diffuse problems. It is aplomb. And so, it being in the suggestive position for you, that means you need fire in order to move that cold eye. And this kind of comes down to you not being very well grounded in your day-to-day affairs. And it's because you have somewhat opposition to the sensory. That it is something that you're really not. And so I kind of recognize, like when you're talking about conflict, you're not giving me, do you like conflict or not? You're talking about, can I get around it? And you're talking about not really confronting people, but being able to manage it through the FE, of course, where you're able to talk people down, calm people down, and make things more civilized. And so I think this is kind of demonstrating you're not making this grand statement about it like it's your super ego and you don't like it. It's more so that it's kind of in the middle. And this is why, to me, it seems more suggestive than something that's unvalued, simply because you were not overtly negative about it. You didn't seem negative about it. You just kind of said, yeah, I can handle it, but I just don't really handle it head on. Does that make sense?
Mm.
All right, so we're going to move on to number 6. This is the mobilizing. So the mobilizing is two-dimensional valued. It is gung-ho, it's enthusiastic, it's all over the place, and it is also not really done to effect. It's just done often. So it is something that is done in isolation almost. And as you become more balanced and nuanced with it, you become more capable of integrating yourself into the surrounding environment. So the mobilizing that I believe that you have is TI. And there's a very specific reason why I believe you're TI. And it is how you responded to my truth question. You gave me... Well, I guess I really haven't gone too far into TI mobilizing. So TI mobilizing is... I'll be brief. The TI mobilizing is basically a person's structure that they have, and all the information that they stack, all the things that they learn and know. This is why the information needs to have a vector to it, so it can be congruent to the rest of TI, because TI is internally consistent. I think that you are demonstrating to me good TI. You're very capable of emptying out your bag of knowledge and being able to be articulate and to think pretty clearly about things. Especially in the political question, I think that you demonstrated an ability to break it down in a very beta quadra fashion, where I think that you were kind of capable of wrangling with it. And it wasn't something that you were so afraid of, and that's because TI is very capable of exercising its knowledge. And so I find that people who are TI valuing tend not to shy away from things, especially beta quadra TI, because that they can display their arguments in a concrete and concise manner that cannot be argued with. This is what TI is. It's internally consistent. And so, like you're saying, what can't be argued with? What is truth? What is there? What's apparent? And this kind of reminds me a bit more of a pragmatist answer to the question, which would explain the blocking with SE. But it is also not really something that I would see from a researcher's reply. I find that with TI mobilizing, that it can be a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it's like the person's thinking about it. Like, oh man, I can't think. I don't know. I had this wonderful way of putting it and it disappeared. This feeling. Yeah, so I think that you kind of demonstrate that TI is certainly at hand, is at reach, but it itself is maybe not your primary modus operandi, just simply because how you responded to some things. And I personally think that FE makes a display, and that it certainly wouldn't be something like suggestive, we'll say. That it's like, man, I get insecure when people don't like me. In fact, your emotions are handled. You're a humanitarian. You can process your emotions. You don't need to freak out about that too much. All right, so the final blocking, the id. The id is your weak and unvalued. So these are things that you just don't really care for. And so it's more so just like ignorance than like an opposition. It can also be pretty critical because you don't really use that. And so it's like you look at it, that's not how you do that. And then the ego steps in and tells you why. But so the first element that we're going to think about is number 7, the ignoring. So it's 3-dimensional valued. With the ignoring, this is something that you can't do for very long without getting bored. But when you do it well. I think that your response to my any question is extremely emblematic of that. Because I think when probed enough, you did reach down and grab some NE. But on the surface, you were just completely dismissive of it. Like, what even is an idea? And then you were talking about ideas are for other people. And so then there's like the FE. Like it's the ideas for the people. I think I might be misquoting you. But it's I'm seeing the FE in front of the ignoring. And so therefore the ignoring is kind of showing me that it's not valued. Despite you reaching down into the earth and grabbing up NE and holding it up. Certainly your attitude towards it didn't, and I'm not saying that you had an attitude or anything, but the way you related to the SE, no, NE, excuse me, did not seem to be valued or like creative or something. So the final one we're going to talk about is the demonstrative, number 8. So this is going to get back to some of the things I was talking about earlier. So with number 8, the demonstrative, this is something that you can't escape, that you'll always be, that everyone will always kind of like see from you. It shows, and you'll talk about it, and you'll do it well, but you will never finger it. Like, you will never point it out and say that that's it right there. That's where the problem is. That's what it is. In fact, if you see it out in the world, you might be like, that's not right. That's kind of dumb. Simply because this is not like your articulate, like soliloquy. This is something more so that you can use, and then it's just not, you don't prefer it. So it's just kind of there, floating in space, being used whenever it's at reach. So the demonstrative I believe you have is FI. With FI demonstrative, this is probably the people who are on the merry side of things that have the most capability to deal with seriousness and heavy emotions. So this means for themselves and others, they're definitely going to have a lot more patience with pain. They're going to have awareness of it. It's not going to be something that they're going to struggle with. And I really think that you have like a good understanding of that. And for other people, and you tended to toe the line between FI and FE more so than anything else in a lot of your responses to questions. Like when I was talking about FE, especially with FE base, usually people are quite enthusiastic about FE and says it has all sorts of these uses and purposes. You gave me like an ESI's answer, like manipulation. But then you were saying, well, I can manipulate. And it wasn't like the same answer as like ESI. It's like, no, I'm not fake. And I'm like, oh, ESI, you don't get it. You don't get it, you sweet summer child. But, sorry, ESIs, don't hit me. You will, because you're SE. But so the thing that says you're not black and white with morals, for example, this is demonstrating to one, that you're irrational and that you lead with a perception function rather than a judgment function. And 2, it's kind of telling me that, it's FI demonstrative. It's not FI base. You're not an EII or something. Simply because you're recognizing where an EII or an ESI will get too caught up in their decision making in order to see the nuances in the gray. And that's what the irrational does. Hey, while you're being over there all passionate and thinky about things, you should think about this. The information, be a little bit more gray, like us all. You're too uptight. So I think that's kind of your critique on rationality through the FI demonstrative. So what do you think? Do you think do you agree with the typing? Does it make sense?
So you've typed me IEI, right? Or INFJ and MBTI.
Yes, IEI.
I always find that so interesting because I was just recently typed by someone else as what is it? SLI. So ISTJ and MBTI. And so I might as well tell you, like, I self-type as INTJ, but it seems that people really see one axis or the other and they have a really hard time. Like, you're not the only one. A lot of people have debated, like, either ILI or IEI for me. And it also depends on the questions that are asked that either bring out, at least in my opinion, like pseudo FE or TE. But yeah, as long as you can recognize the fact that you recognized NI dominant, like NI first, then I think that your typing is like actually observant of the person. Like it's different when someone types me ESFJ. That's That's always a fun typing, usually for bench typing. But
SLI, I
Yeah.
wouldn't corroborate simply because you were talking about being a sensitive person. And SLIs are really just kind of like goofballs. And they're just kind of there. You know, they're SE ignoring. So they really don't have that same sensitivity. And that's the thing. I see a lot more sensitivity in you. I see that you definitely, with people, are a lot more capable of having some sort of like intimacy and realizing the like state and condition of being. I mean, the reason that I wouldn't have typed you something like IEI is some of the responses to the questions. I would definitely say that you are giving me a response that is more TI valuing than TI unvaluing. Simply because if I was looking at TI demonstrative, it would be alternating with the ignoring rather than just because I really didn't see TE or what I would consider as TE in the typing session. So I would personally think that TE would be unlikely.
Yeah, and that also seems to be a theme where people either really see TE or really see FE in me, because I feel like as far as stereotypes for ILA goes, I'm far more soft, and I've been told that before as well, and also just better with people. But it also makes me wonder what I've intentionally grown better at being with people, but also I feel that reading people and being able to see people in a way that it's far more NI or intuition than it is a judging function. But regardless, I understand why there's so much like.
I mean, I also have an opinion along the process result.
Mm-hmm.
And so this would be one of the things why I wouldn't have typed you process, is you gave me a very stereotypically results IP answer to the dictator question. You had a little piece in there where you're talking about the interconnectedness, and I think it's because the results recognize that other people are at hand and can be used a little bit more. I think the process types lay down a lot more like wet sheets of information, where you're kind of talking about where the rubber meets the road and where like the things are entangling themselves and what's around them, which to me is just results IP a lot more than results than process IP from the patterns that I've seen. And so even then, it's like SLI would have some of the major structures in place that I still were recognizing in this typing session. I just do not see delta quadra values for you. And I do not see a lot of the characteristics that I expect of an SLI.
No, I've never typed myself SLI. I just find it interesting that the previous session, like I feel like they typed the middle two functions correctly, and then this one's I feel like has typed the first and fourth correctly. So it's interesting based on the typist and the questions they ask, how they come to the conclusions they do.
Yeah. I mean, there's also potential that my observations ring true, but also that is I think in conversation for another day. But
yeah. Also, just I mean, it seems that the difference tends to be whether they determine TEFI or FE TI, and then usually people have strong opinions on that. But when it comes to the perceiving axis, like the argument for SLI, I don't want to strawman them, but it really seems to be more of like my focus on aesthetics and my how much importance I give to like or how much I enjoy just like I've also learned to enjoy aesthetic hobbies and physical sensory hobbies like gardening or whatever.
yeah.
And I'm also into fashion, makeup, interior design. Like it's they have a hard time seeing, even though I feel like how I do that is very SE and it's very clearly SE compared to an SI way of doing that. It's that I feel is their determination for SLI over ILI. Due to I'm not a little troll that rolled out of bed and got on camera and doesn't pay attention to sensory whatsoever, which I don't agree is what inferior SE is anyway, but that is where that
no, certainly not. I mean, if you're talking about it, like caring about your appearances is more SE than SI anyway. SI people might be comfortable with the way that they dress, and that's why they dress. SE, excuse me, my throat's getting caught again. SE is actually more so understanding of how your aesthetic and style impacts the relationships and situations that you have around you. And so that the way that you design yourself and the way that you construct yourself speaks to other people. And so that's what the SE is more so focused on. So the SE would probably be the person who's going to try to be like clean cut and nice looking and all these things because of the impact that's going to leave on people. Or the SI person is dressing as they dress because it's comfortable for them and that works. And that's kind of a big difference. One thing I would say, and this is going to be controversial, because not all artists are humanitarian, but I do find a lot of humanitarians are interested in style, art, design, and that is a pretty strong concept that rings true. So it's not to say that IEI can't be. There are some IEI musicians out there. I can think of one immediately. She's actually in the list of people that I've typed on my channel already. She's an IEI and she was an artist. But yeah, is there anything else you'd like to say to me before we terminate the session?
No, I liked hearing everything you had to say, so thank you for typing me.
You're welcome. You have a good night, and the recording is going to be stopped.